This video is brought to you by
Hawkland, photographer's clothing.
What are the best entry-level cameras in 2024 and probably also in the next year with a tight budget of up to $600? From a professional photographer's point of view, I have looked through various current and older models and their average prices and have put together my personal top list for you. This is the first part of 3 parts in different budgets, and almost all the cameras we are talking about we have looked at again and picked up for you again, that you get a virtual, real feel of the cameras. So no matter whether you or someone you know wants to start taking photos with a real camera, this is the list that I personally would consider with a small budget. All cameras in the budget do not come with a lens, because the lens that most manufacturers sell as a so-called kit lens is usually rather disappointing, and you get a much better price value if you buy a lens yourself and the camera straight without a lens. I will also give you a personal lens recommendation for each camera model, so you can get started with your own kit, you can say. The goal is to get a nice blurry background look, because this is the typical photography look that many people want from a real camera. If you want to do something different with your camera, like sport photography, macro photography or landscape photography, you of course get a different lens. I have intentionally left out some models, otherwise the list would be endless, and just included the current best mirrorless models from the major manufacturers, as well as affordable older models that are still technically top today. All prices are average price ranges, which also take into consideration the used prices and not the recommended retail prices, and can of course be totally different depending on when you watch the video, where you personally live and where you look for the camera. I, for example, live in Germany, and we include tax in the prices, so this is why the prices might be different in your country. Personally, I can recommend that you start buying a used second-hand camera, especially your first camera. Because if you get more into the hobby, you will upgrade at some point anyway. And if you don't continue with your hobby, you still save some money and can sell the camera at a good price again. If you don't know what the terms like APS-C, ISO and so on mean, I recommend you to watch this video from my beginner's course. There I explain everything about cameras. All the cameras are sorted in this video in ascending order by price, and in the end I give you my personal recommendation. Now let's start with the list. Number 1, the Panasonic Lumix GH5 for about $350 to $600. A solid MFT sensor camera from 2017 that is the only one in that price range to have an internal image stabilizer and really good video features. These include 4K 60 frames per second and Full HD up to 180 frames per second, as well as a microphone and a headphone input. But it is also good for photography, 20 megapixels and ISO up to 25,600. Short note about ISO. I only consider the base ISO values in the specs, not the extended high ISO values. They may sound nice, but in reality, in my opinion, they are more marketing than really useful. The screen can be flipped forward and has touch. 12 images per second continuous shooting are possible with 225 focus points. In my opinion, it's not the most beautiful camera to hang around your neck, but it's a workhorse, and for the start, the price-value ratio is great. For MFT, look for lenses with a good open aperture, that the background is well blurred. For a start, for example, the Panasonic 25mm f1.7. Number 2 is the Fujifilm XT2 from 2016. Price between $400 and $600. It is built with a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor and has an X mount. For beginners, the mount connection is important when you are looking for lenses. I would recommend you to watch my video about lenses from my beginner course to learn everything about lenses. Fuji is known for its cool retro look, and this camera has that look, both on the outside and in the film looks on the camera. 4K 30 frames and HD 60 frames per second are possible, which is great for 2016, but no stabilizer. 14 frames per second continuous shooting is possible, but also no touchscreen and only a tiltable, foldable and not rotatable to the front screen to film or see yourself while photographing. 325 focus points and ISO up to 12,800 is possible. The Fuji is for those who like retro looks and beautiful cameras, don't want to film themselves and are looking for a good camera even though it's the oldest on the list. If you're lucky, you might find also the newer XT3 in silver or the smaller XT20 in your budget. A good affordable lens for this would be the Fuji XC35mm f2, or if it's in your budget, something a bit faster like a 35mm 1.4 lens. Number 3 on the list is the Nikon Z50 from 2019 with a 21 megapixel APS-C sensor. Used and on sale, you can get it for between $400 to $600 without a lens. It's Nikon's most affordable Z-mount camera that natively goes up to ISO 51,200. That's quite a performance in terms of price. No image stabilization, however, and only 209 focus points, but a solid 11 frames per second continuous shooting are possible. Video can be recorded at 4K 30 frames and HD 120 frames. The screen can be tilted and flipped down. In our test, it worked medium well and is not really practical to put the camera with that screen on a tripod to film yourself. For me, a solid entry-level camera from Nikon, which has strength in the ISO range and slow motion HD, but if you have a budget of around $300 more, you can also get a much nicer APS-C camera from Nikon, the ZFC. More on that in the next video. Interesting lenses to start with the Nikon would be the 40mm 2.0 lens or the Viltrox 33mm 1.4 lens. Before we continue with number 4, let's introduce the sponsor of today's video, making this episode possible for free.
You want to take photos in pouring rain or bitter cold? Easy for me, because of the best jacket system for outdoor photographers. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj, professional photographer for over 12 years. And this is my signature edition of the Hawkland 7-in-1 Parker Pro jacket set for photographers. When I'm outdoors, I want to focus on what's truly important. I want to feel comfortable, warm, dry, and always be ready to take the photo I have in mind, no matter how bad the weather. One set, 3 jacket layers you can wear in 7 ways, made for professional use. Check it out for your adventures. Now on sale. Discontinued and off-season items up to 60% off at www.hawkland.us.
Hawkland. Photographer's clothing.
Number 4 is the Sony A6400. From 2019 with 24 megapixel APS-C sensor and Sony E-mount. Available for around $600 to $800, sometimes even less if used. Compared to the others, it's relatively small, has a whopping 425 focus points and can take 11 images per second in continuous shooting mode. The viewfinder is quite small and not in the best position to photograph with, but the camera is quite light sensitive at ISO 32,200 and can record 4K 30 frames and HD 120 frames in video mode. The screen can be flipped up so that you can film yourself except when you're using accessories on top. It doesn't have a sensor stabilizer, but if you want that and have an extra $300, you can get the 6600 or 6500 by Sony, which have a larger battery, a stabilizer and a few other upgrades. Technically, it's a great entry-level camera and very compact. A good lens would be the Sony 35mm 1.8 or another lens that is available from third-party manufacturers such as from Samyang, the 35 1.8, or from Tamron or Sigma or some other lenses. The last one on the list is the Canon R50, a 24-megapixel APS-C camera with RF mount from 2023. And therefore the newest on the list. But is it also the best? Completely new, it's slightly over budget, but when it's on sale or used and without a lens, you can get it for around $600. With ISO 32000, it is quite sensitive to light, has a massive 651 focus points and can take 12 continuous photos per second. Video 4K 30 frames and HD 120 frames are possible, and the screen can be flipped to the side and rotated to the front so that you can film yourself. The camera is solid, but for being so new, it doesn't have anything special that didn't already exist in 2019. In my opinion, only that it's from Canon now. As an entry-level camera, however, it has an RF mount, it has a higher quality than the R100 by Canon, so for the price, you definitely get a good entry-level camera. The RF 50mm 1.8 would be a nice lens to start with, maybe even better a 35mm lens, but that costs $500 with RF mount, and there aren't many third-party alternatives at the moment, which is why I wouldn't currently choose the Canon maybe as a starter camera with all the stuff you have to buy or can get at the moment. But that's just my personal opinion. But which camera would be my first choice now? Which would I recommend? Before I reveal that, why don't you write in the comments what camera you would choose and maybe what camera you have to help others making a choice, and maybe give your experiences in the comments below. Also maybe what lenses. And don't forget to like the video, this helps more people to see it. Thank you. So my personal choice would be, it depends. The budget is relatively tight, and if you primarily want to film video, then I would say choose the Panasonic GH5 for video enthusiasts, but also good for photos. But if you want more of a lifestyle, stylish, beautiful, older, all-around camera, then maybe take the Fuji. And if you want to film yourself and have good autofocus while filming and taking photos, then maybe take the Sony a6400 or the Canon R50. The Nikon is also not bad, but I personally don't like that folding display to the bottom. The Sony has a rather small viewfinder, and the Nikon on the other hand fits well in my hand. Tough choice, isn't it? And if you really ask me personally, just for photography, I would say none of those cameras. But rather buy a used full-frame camera from 10 or 15 years ago to really learn photography and have a beautiful look. But they are not good for video. As you can see, there's no such thing as a camera that can do everything. At least not in that price range up to $600. And I think it doesn't matter much which one you get to start with. Just get the one that appeals the most to you, and just get any camera and a good open aperture lens, then you get that nice blurry background and you'll be happy. And over time, you realize what else you will need, and you will anyway upgrade your camera, I can promise you. As a starter kit, accessories around a lens and a camera, I have a video about that you can find up here. That was the first part with the entry-level cameras, and we will continue this series with the second part and the cameras for more of the enthusiasts, with cameras up to $2,500. $500. And in part 3, we will continue with the top cameras up to $8,000. If you enjoyed this episode and it helped you, subscribe to the YouTube channel and recommend this video to someone who is starting to take photos. My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj and I wish you some really great photos with your first camera.